Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard along with your host Bill Stierle, and if you're watching the video, you notice something's a little different on Bill's side because Bill is spending a month on the road and doing some cool stuff. And so you might notice he sounds a little different and the background looks a little different, but it's still Bill. So, hey, Bill.
It's still me, Tom. It's still me. And there's one thing about the work that I do regarding communication and conflict, it's everywhere. So if you need some support with communication and trying to get peace in the world, it's one of my things that happens is I travel a bunch to do that. So that's what's happening in my world these days.
But wonderful thing about modern technology, we can continue to record and publish these podcasts from anywhere. It's one of the things I love about podcasting.
Yeah, me too.
Well, so Bill, today we decided we're going to talk about, really a different angle on truth, and it's truth and what at least appears to be the death of curiosity.
Yes.
And I love that word, curiosity. It's actually one of my favorite words, and I am very familiar with this word, and I use it a lot in my business and what I do in daily life. I'm a naturally, inherently curious person, and I actually think it's part of what makes me a good business person. And a business owner, but that's right. Not really the focus today. But what's really shocking to me, and maybe this is a good sort of departure point for us today, is I think all of us, unless we're living under a rock, are seeing messages put in front of us, whether it's on social media or on television or radio, and even in podcasts.
Yeah,
we are seeing messages of somebody spreading something that they are stating as if it's fact, making a statement about something. Maybe it's about the coronavirus, maybe it's about the U.S. Post Office, maybe it's something to do with a fact about one political candidate or another, and it's being presented as fact. And whenever I see something like that, whether I agree with the statement on its face or don't agree with the statement on its face, I tend to look at that as like, I wonder if that's true.
I wonder if that's true.
And I'm curious to find out if it's true. And certainly before I go and like it, share it, comment on it, I always want to do my homework and make sure I know before I make a comment and get egg on my face or something, right?
Right.
Make a statement that is not in alignment with truth.
Right.
I want to go find out if that's true. I'm curious to learn about that, but I'm finding an incredible lack of curiosity out there amongst an awful lot of people. Would you agree with that, Bill?
Yeah, I think the problem, just to first give you some empathy, how exasperating it feels, because in the pursuit of truth or being able to have a process discussion with somebody, is that they're assembling their opinion and quickly going into a theory or a version of truth and formulating it very, very quickly, instead of like taking these points of data that are out there on the internet, and then crunching those data into valuable pieces of information, and then tying that information into knowledge. You see how this takes time?
It does.
And then taking the knowledge and driving it into an insight. And then that insight becomes a piece of wisdom. It's like you got to take some steps there. It's this data to information to knowledge to insight to wisdom. And you got to have curiosity along the way, because if you don't, you'll go to a theory and or a conspiracy theory too soon. See, the conspiracy theory is something that is formulated from more these unlike or unreal data points that, oh my gosh, that must mean that there's this group of people doing this. I'm going like, I don't know if that's true or not. It's just because, just because all the people that go to your church, they happen to find each other and have relationships with each other, it doesn't mean that this political group is all, acting in harmony with each other. No, it's just a different community, and they know each other, and that's why they connect together with each other. It's not because there's some great conspiracy going on. It's just they know each other, and that because they hang out next to each other, and that's why they know each other, because they are collating around a certain belief or a certain experience. And it doesn't mean that there's a conspiracy. It just means that they happen to be living or in the same place and going to the same parties and, going to the same church. That's why they're together, because they are in the same belief structure, not because that they're, there's this big conspiracy thing that's taking place. And there's several of the comedians that have done a great job on conspiracy theories. So whether it's Bill Maher or Samantha Bee or Jon Stewart used to do this, or
John Oliver did it recently.
Yeah. It's like you draw this and you put this and you put this and you put this together, and you go like, oh my gosh, I can see how they could have done that, but that is not necessary. Not necessarily, a truth. You've got to remain curious about that. And is it done out of humor, or is it done because you're actually trying to gain wisdom? So that's a big part of it too.
I agree that there is, curiosity to me is such a key element here. I have a little example, Bill, that maybe is one we can discuss a little bit that happened just last week. Last episode we talked about a little bit about the vice presidential nominee for the Democrats, Kamala Harris. And when that news broke, there was all sorts of discussions on social media. And so I saw one, and someone made a statement that claiming that Kamala Harris was not really African American, and why is everybody saying she's African American? He was making a statement, she is not African American. And I decided, I did a little homework because I was curious and I researched it, and then I commented back to this person. I said, I'm curious why you think she's not African American, or not really, or legitimately African American. Her father's from Jamaica, and Jamaica was part of the slave trade route from Africa for slaves. And that's how Jamaica was populated, hundreds of years ago. And therefore, she's an African American. Well, then this person replies, well, she doesn't identify as African American. I'm like, really? She doesn't? So I decided I would go look at her about page for the U.S. Senate website. The Senate.gov website. And there is a page for every senator, and Kamala Harris has one. And it says plainly right there, she identifies as African American of Jamaican, obviously, descent, but identifies as African American and South Asian American, because her mother's from India, I believe, right? And so I just decided to provide a link to that and said, interesting, when I go to the Senate page for Kamala Harris, here is what she says about herself. And I'm sure she wouldn't allow this to be put there if she didn't identify as these things. So to an extent, I was not, in some ways, as we say, the facts don't always help. I mean, I was providing some facts, but I was also proposing a little, curiosity to this person, saying, I'm curious why you think that, or what gives you this idea, and then providing some information.
Yeah. So we're going to feel exasperated because our need for truth can't fully be purchased by using facts and information. The person really needs empathy for identity and empathy for the what's happened to us as a divided conversation. And I think that's the hard part, because it's very, very easy, if I was a pundit, to jump on the gerbil wheel with you and go like, yeah. And all of a sudden we're in the same boat we don't want to be in. But because what happens is it's being curious allows us to find the truth, and also not to get so inflamed or, engaged in the process of trying to make our point, going like, well, I didn't know that she didn't identify herself. Did you know that? Or is that true from this one article, and that's why you're formulating this theory? See, the theory of things is I'm seeing the outline of the stars. It's like, looking up the stars and say, yep, I can kind of see how that's Scorpio. I can kind of see how those stars are doing like a bear thing up there. I can kind of see that. Yeah. Well, the Dipper, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense. There is a big, and it's a Dipper, and then there's a small one that, yeah, I can see those, And so our conceptual mind wants to grasp the bigger picture, and then what winds up happening to things that we don't understand or don't have clarity about will tend to get a stronger conspiracy theory than things that are not so big. So the difficulty is to use our curiosity through the process of, here's some data, here's some information, here's the knowledge that we can do from this at this time, and here's the insight. Well, what's our wisdom decision? So, like, for example, with the coronavirus, the initial projections were this higher number. Well, you have to go to what the projection is going to be, called the worst case scenario, because that's what governments need to do, is go to the worst case scenario, not the least case scenario, because the least case scenario will allow the thing that you're trying to deal with to wiggle out of your grasp, which is exactly the way we're facing our current environment. We want to take the data and not ignore data points, not ignore information points, and gain a knowledge base. Hey, this is what some countries are doing. Whether it works or not, they're flattening their damn curve. Let's just do what they're doing and get rid of the idea that America is not going to do it that way because we're going to do it this other way. It's like, no, you want to use other people's knowledge or wisdom. And if it's an overreaction, well, at least it's an overreaction. It's at least we might not have needed to spend XYZ money on it, but boy, it sure saved a lot of money on the back end, and that's the exasperation to really that we're going to have, because we're not converting data, information, knowledge, insight, and wisdom as a sequence. We're not doing that. We're just jumping from, here's some data, here's a theory, there must be a conspiracy. Here's some data, here's a truth. The truth equals this conspiracy theory, or this theory that I'm engaged in. And it's like, And it's like, stop looking at the projection. Look at, draw the line to where the line's going. Be able to follow. This is this and this, and then there's all these other people that want to have to weigh in. They want to weigh in, and they're going like, "What are you weighing in on? You're weighing in on whether, Scorpio's tail looks like this or looks like this. What part are you weighing in on? Oh, no. That means that it's this. It's like, no, it does not. That is an unrelated data point. And there's certain news outlets that focus on the unrelated data point to purchase truth and take advantage of the lack of curiosity development in our schools, the lack of curiosity development in our spiritual centers. I mean, how is this belief making you a better person? Then if it's not, it may not be a spiritual practice. You may want to adjust off of that, because you're not a better person for this. You're not inclusive, or you're not accepting. You are illustrating or, amplifying an enemy image of another human being. And, that might not be the strongest, a way to go as a nation of inclusion with all men are created equal. Sheesh, you may want to change that a little bit. I mean, that sentence, even in its literal form, all men are created equal, doesn't include women, and that kept them from voting for a lot of years. So if you're not looking at our human condition the way it is, it's like we need to be curious about, well, what was the intent of that person back then? And yes, those were the data points back then. That's the information and that's the wisdom that they had back then, but it doesn't mean it was right. Yeah. And that's why curiosity is so essential. And we're experiencing the death of curiosity. It's don't be curious. It's, have an experience of doubt and skepticism, and then cast criticism and judgment on people on the other side of your belief structure. It's like, that's not going to help us. That is not going to help us. So, yeah.
So Bill, you mentioned about, data, information, knowledge, and then on all the way to conspiracy theory. If it's all right with you, I'll share my screen, an illustration that you provided me for that. Does that sound all right?
So, I mean, the funniness of this, the experience of knowing what the scope of that, what the scope of that image is, is that, it is that we've got to do a better job of being curious on every data point that down the list. It's funny, but it's also not.
Well, I found it funny, but also I would say instructive, really. I mean, what this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this showing a path of curiosity to a large extent until you get to the very last sort of phase?
Yeah, but if you kill curiosity, you never get there. I mean, if you kill curiosity, what happens is the person just goes from a data point all the way to a theory. And because they're using, oh, I can kind of see it because I've listened to you. And this makes for great TV ratings is somebody doesn't have to think. All they've got to do is jump from here to here, and they're okay with the jump. Now, this is both. This chart is also both on the left and the right. I mean, it's not like the left has any free pass on this one.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, they've got their list of things, and kind of the right's got their list of things. That it's like, well, how close is it, to wisdom, and will we get to a nation where we make wisdom a priority, where we take knowledge and convert it into something that's usable at this moment, and say, listen, the outlier that is sitting, on this other thing, we could go that path, but that's not going to help us. See, if you look at even the wisdom part of the chart, it's like, the purple dot on the bottom, it's like, well, that's defunding the post office so that private industry can run the post office. Well, that just turns the post office into another cable company. Tom, is your cable company responsive? No.
Not really.
No, not really. Is there enough competition there? No, there's not. There's not, because if there's competition, they'd be twice or three times or five times responsive. They'd have somebody there in the next day to fix your cable stuff. If they had somebody that you could easily hop to that was in competition with them. It's not designed that way. It's designed, it's there. We have not applied the antitrust laws that are on the books to say, wait a minute, some of these things are not in alignment with the best interest of capitalism. And the best interest of capitalism is not to have, two cable companies and operating in different areas, and they're not competing with each other. So guess what? The consumer's stuck. They're stuck because they can't get a better service because, it's not valuable to the company to do it.
Sure.
So very, very problematic.
What I found interesting is that, this is, and obviously for everybody listening, I have this chart in the blog post at purchasingtruth.com, so you can go and check it out. But, it takes really what is beginnings with data, going through information, knowledge, insight, wisdom, and then the last one is conspiracy theory. And it's really interesting that when you get to a conspiracy theory, you have to take a jump, a leap from either data or information, something to go directly there. And isn't it often just a partial truth, Bill? Right.
There's going to be a partial truth, which is a data point of information, a combination of where the data is and the information things. And that's where people start drawing the lines together to get a hold of knowledge. That's where we start to gather that, wait a minute, look at the bigger insight. I got to get from this point to this other point. Let's draw the line to that, because that's the best path to go forward. Is the best path forward to go. Well, and I've complained about cable companies in the past. Why is that? Why? Because, well, if other countries that have viable economic competing elements with different cable companies, I'm thinking specifically of South Korea right now, is that their internet bandwidth is extraordinary. It is making their communication between each other more effective. They don't have drop lines. They don't have, the things that we have here in the U.S., which are, you can go to some places and things don't work technology-wise. Meanwhile, in other countries, it's like, yep, we have it right there. And that's what a viable, engaged and energized economy looks like, that these companies competed with each other. They have fairness and they try to get talent and skill to hire and bring them in. And if they do that well, then, things can really make a big difference, but, otherwise, you're stuck with, somebody promising you something that's not in alignment. And isn't that what a conspiracy theory is somebody promising you something that is not really real? And whether it's any promise, any promise a Democrat has made that is outside the fray, or a Republican that is made that's outside the fray, it's like that. Yes, you did deliver this thing you said you would, but it's really not what's valuable. It's not valuable to the nation to build a wall. There's not value in it. That's my viewpoint. To another person's belief structure who's been saturated with immigrants are the problems, well, their belief is, no, Bill, it is valuable to have a wall because, number one, he promised it. Number two, he started to deliver it, even though it's not valuable to us. But, this is the way this is outside of insight, outside of wisdom, is it's ignoring those two things. I have sort of some data about immigration. I have sort of some information about immigration. And this is the wisdom? No, this is the decision out of those two pieces? No, you haven't done enough. You haven't looked at, is it worth the money? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the resource? The answer is no, 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 no. I mean, there's like all these no's. It's not worth it. So,
well, and it's interesting.
Very important.
You could take even just our experience thus far with the coronavirus, with COVID-19, and the whole process started with some data. We hear about somebody who's sick. We hear about a bunch of people that are sick in China, and then there's one in the United States, and then there's more in and there's all these ones in Italy, and you got all this data that no one's done much yet with. Then you got information as you're starting to, uncover more pieces of that data and start to, see where things are lining up. And then, you start to build some knowledge. It's affecting people that are older more than people that are younger. And, it's transmitted through the respiratory system, droplets in the air. And, you gain this knowledge, then eventually you get to the point, if there are some insights, hey, we're finding if, we put people on ventilators, they may be able to survive, and they may not, but some might. And then, there's some other techniques. If we do this or that, then they might survive. And I don't think we've even gotten to as much of the wisdom part yet, because I think wisdom maybe comes from looking in the rearview mirror a bit after it's over and completely assessing everything, and then having that experience, right?
Right.
So then, right. But we've got so many people jumping to the virus is a hoax. I mean, and all these different conspiracy theories about it, that, it was manufactured in a Chinese lab and it's meant to really harm us all. I mean, just you go past all that knowledge and wisdom and jump right to a conspiracy theory.
That's right.
And a lack of curiosity allows that to happen, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Because it's, I want to make sense of my world based on my beliefs. And my brain has been cultured to believe, not to trust the outside environment. Therefore, there's people on the right and the left that go, this was a bioweapon that started here. Was a thing that started here. And there is pieces of data out there about where it showed up, where did it first show up, when did it show, and all that stuff is really valuable. It's not even to say to ignore that those possible data points are a part of the line of wisdom or the line of understanding. Many times we come back at 15, 20 years later, we can redraw the wisdom line because we didn't have enough wisdom or insight or knowledge, and all of a sudden you get some knowledge 15 years later and you go like, oh, no wonder why that showed up that way. Because of genetic testing, this person is a descendant, this African-American person is a descendant of Thomas Jefferson because of the children he fathered with one of his slaves. I mean,
Sally Hemings, right.
It's like, whoa, okay. Now you've got the data point was he was a great guy. The conspiracy theory showed up this way, but once you get knowledge and insight and then wisdom that goes with it, you're going like, okay, and then we also got to put that in the perspective of the time. It's like we can judge somebody in the history that happened over 200 years ago doing a behavior as being abhorrent. And we need to look at some of our choices now and saying, what are some of the things that we're doing that are, abhorrent and things that are not in alignment with the consideration for the planet, consideration for the environment, for ecosystems, all because it's a better economic, or somebody in the short term can make a lot of money at it. I'm not sure that's the best way to think about this. I mean, and even to click back to a belief structure from a Native American belief structure is what are you doing now and how is it going to affect 7 generations forward? And that is a toughie because we don't think like that. I mean, decisions I'm making, decisions you're making are not necessarily 7 generational decisions. We're just trying to chop it out in our modern world, and trying to get our best efforts for truth and collaboration and cooperation to take place. Because, that's where the sweet spot takes place, is that are you in collaboration and cooperation with another person? Are you, standing for the truth, and are you remaining curious to get there? It doesn't mean that you can't make a mistake or two, as you and I have done in the past,
Sure.
or 3 or 4.
I'm sure.
Or 7. There's a lot. There's a few there. Yeah, there's a few there. So, so that's a big part of it.
I've certainly made lots of mistakes, but I'm always curious to learn from that mistake so that I don't make it again. Personally, that's correct. That's correct. And I think the hard part about it is that the things that are sticking with people are things that ones that have been done in repetition towards ones that are done in repetition, and the person's brain is hearing that level of repetition and getting overtly engaged with adrenaline and cortisol and anger and aggravation and trying to meet their needs at the expense of others, rather than and even in an unconscious way. I've watched a couple of different political ads from both sides that I would say some of them are not in alignment with truth, showing strength where there is not strength, showing weakness where there is not weakness, telling a story that only has a partial truth to it,
I watched a Congress person do something like that. I'm going like, that story is not congruent. And then I had to become curious. Well, is it congruent? And if so, what are the obstacles that that environment or that city faced to make it impossible for, that city to do something to grow or to be vibrant or to foster a healthy space. Anyway, so that's that's kind of like the big part of what we're working on here is, can we remain curious enough to say, without being dismissive, well, is it true? Is it true that because this group of people, kind of led this environment, is it because, are they the cause of the downfall, or, there might be bigger things that are causing the downfall here rather than that. So,
well, Bill, we often talk about people's needs being a driver for actions they take. So
yes.
What might be a need that prevents a person from, being curious or following any curiosity they might have? Is there an underlying
Yes.
need that,
is
yeah, a reason why?
Yeah, there's a few of them that really cause people not to use curiosity. Certainty is one need. I have certainty about the way I see the world, and my world is giving me the wisdom to run my life. And if everybody could just do it my way, see, already they have certainty going like, this is the way to think and be in the world, rather than saying there are other ways to live life. Now, I mean, just even with the preponderance of evidence that other countries are doing just fine and living lives that are more vibrant than a person living, that's voting even against their own interests, they still think that their life is better than that other person. And they're not interested in flying to another country to check out and say, look at what is happening here. This life is way better than the life I have in my house. One of the experiences that the East Germans, the East Berliners had when the wall was taken down.
Yeah.
And they came over to see what was happening literally on the other side of the wall. They were furious, angry and furious. They had been living in suppression for so long and be fed messages of suppression for so long by what the communists and the Russians were doing with, East Berlin. It was like they were furious. They were furious. They weren't joyous that, oh my gosh, look at what things. They were going like, we had to live the way we had to live for the last, 10, 15 years or 20 years or whatever it was. I got to check
actually,
my
I think
historical
it was more
things.
like 40
years. Yeah, thank
plus,
you. Yeah, it shows me my mindset needed to grow real quick there. For all those years of living under that way of living, going like, what the heck happened to us? How do we get over here? A person's belief structure, it's tough. It's tough. It's the world has moved past America in a lot of ways, and it's hard for Americans to even believe it. They go like, what happened? They don't want to say, wait a minute. Our airports do not look as good as other countries' airports. They don't want to have that discussion. Only the person that travels internationally gets to have that experience and going like, that airport's floor is so clean that you can literally almost eat off of it because people are cleaning and keeping the airport just completely spick and span, completely clean and tidy. and to the level of cleanliness that you could like eat off the floor. Exaggeration, but it is, or the modern designs of airports in other countries. The efficiency in which they welcome traveling and travelers, so that, that's really, unsettling, because
it is, I sort of was amused how, I think you caught yourself there, but how sometimes as Americans, we speak in brand names.
Speaking brand names. I mean, I caught myself right. Spick and pan. Oh my gosh. That was a cleaning product in the past for all of you with their.
I remember it. Yeah. And
where all of a sudden we're dating ourselves because that's a great example of a saturated message that represented cleanliness. Now, today, Febreze would get that nod. Febreze, it would smell like Febreze.
Yeah, sure.
So curiosity. If we remain curious and don't kill curiosity, we got a shot. If we continue to kill curiosity regarding and keep leaning on our beliefs and our biases, things will not go well. So that's the thing to really get a hold of.
I hope there's a period of restoration where we can all be more curious and, reveal truth and see things from each other's perspectives. Otherwise, it's going to continue to be ugly for a while, regardless of who wins this election.
That's correct. And see, the best part of being curious is that it keeps you into a space of being alive. If you don't, then what happens is that you're vulnerable to either data or information to be used against you, or data or information used to reinforce something. So Tom, here's the scary part of this. In our modern society, literally somebody could go throughout this entire body of work that you and I have done here regarding purchasing truth and pick 20 messages that could serve them and be damaging to us, and it would not be true. That is the double-edged sword of freedom of speech, is that they get to say it because it's sort of kind of true, but it's not inside the context of what really truth looks like, because there's no curiousness to say, well, I know this person said this, but is it like a scale of 1 to 10? They're 10 believing this thing, or is it just a 2? On a scale of 1 to 10. And you and I can actually say something in jest, and somebody can say, oh, that means that this. Instead of going like, it's really kind of a 2, everybody. And we've lost the ability to scale. And that's what happens when you kill curiosity, is that you lose your perspective and you literally put blinders on. And that's the empathy that the Republican Party needs right now, is that they've been cultured into putting blinders on to their world view in order to take a message like voter fraud and say, yes, we have voter fraud in America. And all of a sudden our flag, their flag, that they don't know that it's been associated with voter fraud. They have no idea of the damage that does to America. None. They just say it's being done to us, to our type of America. It's like, no, you just did it to your own flag. You just that narrative has been done. And by the way, if you want to do something about voter fraud, investigate it. That's called getting knowledge and insight and wisdom. And by the way, there's no evidence there. So drop the theory.
Well, and the problem right now is you have the chief executive of the country, the president, who is already fueling conspiracy theory notions himself then he's saying if too many people are allowed to vote by mail, and if I lose the election, then the election was rigged. It was due to that. I mean, he's already setting up the narrative then, and creating
started
a
in 2000
spirit without any pursuit of knowledge or wisdom. And the thing is, on this one, on voting, we have a ton of wisdom in the United States because we've been doing this for a couple hundred years, and all the evidence says there's no voter fraud by mail. Not certainly any amount to justify this kind of alarmist rhetoric.
We used to be on the monitoring. We used to monitor other countries, help them with their monitoring system. We helped them to do that. We were known as a country that would come in and help the people to vote and track the vote of that person. That's what we used to do. We used to be known as the country that could help with that. How are we going to be the country that would help with that when we're questioning our own things? How do we sell that now as, America as the one country that says that? Well, who wants to come here then? Well, it's a really, really a tragic narrative that has gotten started, and that narrative, even though there's some freedom of speech that's going on there, it's not you don't get to have your own facts. Just don't.
Well, right, and unfortunately, the brander in chief is doing so much brand damage to Big A America around the world with regard to voting. He's really, give him credit, he's really good at branding himself and branding others, and he's using his skill right now to do a lot of brand damage to the U.S. around the world. And that's really scary. I mean, especially with him, he's trying to set this situation up where if he loses, the election was rigged. That is not the type of, how do you say, adult mindset that we usually expect from our leaders running for office. And we don't have to go back very far. We only have to go back 20 years to look at the biggest example of that with Al Gore and George W. Bush.
Yes.
Where Al Gore, while he believed he won the election, and truth be told, months and months later, after every vote was counted in Florida, he actually did win Florida. But the Supreme Court ran out the clock. He didn't agree with the decision that was made, but he accepted it for putting country above himself, putting country above his party.
That's right.
And it's disheartening to see how the president is setting us all up for nothing that will be like, adults putting America first in this country, himself, obviously.
That's right. That's
president.
Right. We've got a lot of restoration and a lot of healing to do after this whole thing's over. And the restoration and the healing that needs to take place are for good people that are going to want to fight that battle. The people that are wanted to fight the battle of restoration and trying to heal things. It's going to take, people on both sides. I mean, it's going to take, well-minded, focused people to go like, this is kind of like the way to do this, and to decide on what the future is going to look like that way. So,
and I want to make sure, I want to be very clear here that I believe, and I think you agree with me, Bill, there are plenty of those like-minded people in the United States, in America. I like many Republicans. I am friends with many Republicans who would agree with us, and I'd be friends with them regardless. But but that they're putting America over party, and
Yeah.
That gives me hope for restoration in America.
It does. There's some hope there. We'll have to see what our level of the experience of hope will be after the election. Is it going to be more hope or less hope? And it doesn't mean that the need for respect for America and the need for trust with America doesn't do better after and grow through this time. And something's got to be done, and that's the thing that kind of needs to take place, is that there needs to be a step forward of people that want to fight for this country in a way and dedicate that and make it a part of their legacy and make it a part of their willingness to participate in the restoration process. Because man, we need to go through it. I mean, it's like it's going to be a tough run, So I think one road's a little bit easier, the other road's a little bit harder. The one road I think might be a little bit easier is that if we can just stop the messages of division, that would be helpful, and start with the message of inclusion. That'll be helpful, and that'll start us down the path. So anyway, there's more to come on this, Tom, and it gives us a lot to talk about next time. And I'm sure that we'll get our opportunity to go into how curiosity can be enriched moving forward instead of killing it off like we're currently doing. Which is not great.
Yeah. That curiosity I'm hearing the wizard say, "Don't look at that man behind the curtain." Right. That's the curiosity killing.
That's the moment, man.
Thank goodness for Toto, though. Keeps pulling that curtain back. He's curious. What's there?
That's right. What's there? It's like, wait a minute. That instinctual self. All right, Tom. Well, have a great one, and more to come.
Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.